And we are going to start with the Irish Independent this morning, and it is Six Nations leading the way. Schmidt's World Cup warning, says the headline from Eoin and Conor here. Coach says any drop in standards against England can have ramifications for Japan. Chelsea have completed that Higuain loan deal, as you can see there on the bottom left. And then the story that Conor mentioned just a moment ago, time to cap inter-county training costs, says John Prenty, who is the Connacht CEO. He says maybe it's time that a fair play financial ceiling is put in place on how much should be spent on inter-county teams. Are we getting value for money, he asks, given that 5 Connacht teams spent almost €6 million on team preparation in 2018. So that's 5 counties, €6 million spent on team prep in 2018. He wonders, are we getting value for money? The mantra of our county officers is that our players deserve the best, which is true, but players come in very low on the expenditure food chain. Huge amounts are being spent on backroom teams and professional services, which appear to be uncontrollable, with numbers as large as a small hospital. So interesting stuff there from John Prenty on the back of the Irish Independent this morning. The Times then is England plot brutal test for Ireland. Jones set to unleash heavy artillery in Dublin. Fulham stars assault arrest then, says Matt Hughes. So Abubakar Kamara has been banned from the Fulham training ground and suspended indefinitely after actual bodily harm was caused, and he was arrested. So that's a mad story there. He's caused a bit of trouble, of course, over the last couple of weeks. Claudio Ranieri, of course, is unhappy with him after stealing a penalty off Alexander Mitrovic over Christmas, and apparently he had to go physically at Alexander Mitrovic during a yoga session at Fulham's training ground. So it's a fairly ironic story there. And Higuain can score 30 goals, that same story there on the back of the Times Ireland edition. The Racing Post this morning then is penalty notice. Semi-final decider could go all the way to a shootout. It's Chelsea against Spurs in the Carabao Cup second leg semi-final tonight, and it kicks off at 7:45. Of course, Manchester City winning 10-0 on aggregate against Burton Albion. They're awaiting the victors of that in the final next month. The Irish Times, it leads with yesterday's Six Nations press conference. Relaxed, Schmidt rules himself out of contention for the All Blacks job, while Ireland primed for England's brutality. There was this interesting moment yesterday where Joe Schmidt comes out to the media and says, I've been speaking to Eddie there, and he plans to drop a few more grenades. Almost the mask has slipped a tiny bit between this idea that Schmidt and Eddie Jones should potentially hate each other, but clearly they don't. Clearly Schmidt just kind of finds him rather amusing. Yeah,
like I don't know whether it was just Joe Schmidt being, it's the same story on the back of the Mail, bring them on, but I don't know whether he was being deliberate in diffusing the Eddie Jones sort of villain character, but that's essentially what he has done here, because I think we'd all like to think that, you know, there's this massive tension between the two, and that every time Eddie Jones says something that's designed to provoke outrage, everybody gets outraged. But I think by kind of deconstructing it here, as Joe Schmidt has done, I think it probably takes the sting out of it, whether that's in.
Does that benefit us though? Well, the idea that everybody's talking about Eddie Jones and him being a really nasty man in the lead up to Ireland-England games, surely that benefits the Irish team. There's no pressure on, no pressure on them. The spotlight is sort of removed from them a small bit.
Yeah, I think the only thing really that could have any tangible effect is the comments about Johnny Sexton and the referee. Like whoever, I don't know who the referee is for that game, but whoever it is can't not have read that. And as much as you say, well, that's not going to influence how I referee or what Johnny Sexton says to me, it will be in your head and it will influence it. Like, you can't not think about it now. But no, the rest of the stuff I think is probably just a bit of crack, and the sort of stuff that we don't see in the GA.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one last newspaper for me then. It's the front page of the Irish Examiner sports section, and it's bringing brutality. Schmidt and Jones heat up Dublin battle. And Tommy Martin there, his column this week, GA can't keep double taxing the people who keep the wheels turning. Tommy's column, always a good read, always an amusing read. This week he focuses in on the plot of the graveyard plot that was up for sale at a GA club in Monaghan in Corduff, Seamus McEnany's club. Inevitably, death will come to us all, McEnany said with a Beckettian flourish. So this prize really is priceless, he says. Presumably, Banty will take MasterCard, says Tommy Martin this morning. So he talks about how these volunteers are going out of their way, sweating it to make the money for their club at the moment, and being as creative as they've ever had to be, because, you know, Strictly Come Dancing is no longer a suitable way of making money for your GA club, and then suddenly you've got to pay extra going into a GA match at the moment, which is a fair point.
Yeah, absolutely. And the hidden costs, I think, of being a GA, you know, people say, well, GA members, you know, they feel like they're sort of more invested in the thing, so therefore they should have more of a say in how much they pay. But it's true, like, they are, like, literally invested in this whole thing. You know, they pay out an awful lot of money to be part of the GA, to contribute to the GA, and I think it's inevitable. I don't think Croke Park will have been taken by surprise by the backlash to the ticket price hike. It was never going to be popular, but I suppose the extent of it might have the extent of it might have put them on the back foot a small bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think the backlash. I think at the moment it is very en vogue to create some sort of backlash against the GAA. It doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah.
But I do think that helps the idea. I think Shane Stapleton was on Twitter yesterday wondering who was actually supporting Dick Clerkin's view. And when you think about it, there wasn't actually that many people in support of it. It's like, does it actually deserve to be whatever 4.9 million people against one person when it comes to this? Because it certainly seems that everybody's against the GAA bar one. But I think on this one, I think the majority are probably well informed, because they're the people who are voting with their feet and going to games and actually putting their hands in their wallet to actually pay for this. You've got the rest of the newspapers this morning?
Yeah, bring them on. It's Joe Schmidt this morning, again, speaking about Eddie Jones and England, and again, trying to deconstruct the mind games. This is on the bottom of the back page of the Irish Daily Mail. The story on the bottom is one that's carried in a lot of newspapers this morning, and it's Peter Keane, the new Kerry manager, talking about the threat of relegation, which I have to say surprises me, unless Peter Keane is trying to talk down his team. Obviously to be a work in progress, and there's going to be an awful lot of change with Kerry this year. And David Clifford is out. He won't have the Dr. Croak's brigade. I think Kerry have a larger than number of players involved in the Sigerson this year, because the squad is so young. But they have an awful lot of quality. They have an awful lot of All-Ireland minor winning players. And I just don't think Kerry will be relegated. And I know they have threatened it the past few years when they've brought an older team into the league and they've been kind of slow burners. But for those young Kerry players who are going up against other former All-Ireland minor winning players for their position, you'd imagine there'd be a large degree of hit the ground running. I think Kerry might be one of the teams to actually do some of the early running early on in the league. Yeah, for sure. We'll get into that a little bit later on as well with Anthony Moyles. He's waiting to come on in. But Eden Hazard is dominating a lot of the tabloid back pages. Yeah, the Sun, he has more to do. Nice pun with the Sun this morning. Maurizio Sarri doesn't seem to be the sort of manager who has any bones about publicly criticising his players. And a player whose value is probably decreasing because his contract is running up, Eden Hazard, might not be the player that you want to upset just now. But he's decided that Hazard is... he says he's not a leader. Yeah, he's not a leader. No, he wouldn't have struck me as a leader, in my very uneducated opinion. A guy who's kind of an artist like that, I don't see him kind of driving the team forward in a Roy Keane style gambit from midfield. Well, the thing is, he has captained Belgium 28 times, and that was during the World Cup as well last year. So he's got the captaincy material that was clearly deemed good enough from a Belgian point of view. Whether or not it's true, it doesn't really matter, because Maurizio Sarri should wake up and realise that this is a bad idea. First of all, to do it on Saturday night, but then to double down this week ahead of a Carabao Cup. Well, you have a situation at Arsenal with Mesut Ozil and Unai Emery as well, and I have Ozil and maybe I'm being lazy about this, but I have Ozil and Hazard sort of categorised as similar kinds of individuals who want to do a similar amount of work off the ball, and maybe that's just a gambit from the two managers to try and get a bit more work rate out of the pair, but it's not going to end well for Sarri, I don't think. Yeah, I would say Hazard probably has the capacity to do more work, but I'd say he also has the capacity to sulk just as much as Mesut Ozil. Yeah, exactly. The Star, same back page, actually the same headline, he has more to do. And they touch on the Martin Ferris and the Dáil yesterday, speaking about GA ticket prices. And like a lot of people just making the point that it's not, like John Horan saying that the economy is strong. It's never a good idea to kind of cite the economy as being the primary force in your ticket price hike, because for a lot of places and for a lot of people affected, the economy actually isn't very strong. Yeah, especially when a lot of the tone, and we talk about the sort of anti-GAA sentiment that kind of exists around the country, and the feeling that a lot of it is Dublin-centric. That idea of the economy recovering quickly will not help that view whatsoever, because the economic recovery has been very Dublin-centric. Yeah, and look, the other thing is, it's one, economy being strong is a very... It's a loose phrase. It's a loose phrase, and you can produce as many statistics to say that it's not, to say that it is. House prices in Dublin being higher is only really a sign of house prices in Dublin being higher. So it's true. If you're travelling from, I don't know, there's probably a couple of major distances for hardcore supporters to be travelling this weekend, and then to be charged an extra £5 on the gate. I'd say they're not going to be too convinced by the house prices in Dublin that it's worth the extra £5. The Mirror this morning, Paul Scholes, often outspoken critic of Jose Mourinho's reign. Jose's United were S******E. So shite. Shite. It's probably not the first time he said it, but it makes for a readable back page.
It does. It makes for a readable back page. But to be honest with you, his interview that he's done this morning, where is it here? He's spoken to James Ducker, so it's carried from the Daily Telegraph and printed in the Independent this morning. Is actually really interesting. He just spoke about boredom, really. He speaks about the desperation that he wants to get back into some sort of managerial role. Of course, he's been linked with Oldham. He hasn't ruled himself out of the job just yet. Something may or may not come up. But he says that he's just found it really strange being a BT Sport pundit and having nothing to work towards. He loves the idea of Monday to Friday and everything focused towards Saturday, and that is sort of what gives his life meaning. And he's found that really now he's just taken it. He's half enjoyed the media work, but he needs that competitive edge back in his life once again. And it is the sort of thing that you always wonder about people who've left the game and who can't get into the very few managerial roles that are available. How do you get that bug back? Even in management, it's probably not the same.
No, I can't imagine so. I'd like Scholes always kind of initially struck as a fella who, when he finished playing for United during the week, he didn't do a whole pile, and then he showed up and he was brilliant again the following week. But he's already shown signs of missing it in the past when he came out of retirement. Was it a year and a half later? Was it to come back, and that first game back that he made whatever it was 57 of 59 passes or something in the game. But no, it's interesting. I thought you said initially, talking about boredom, that he was talking about Jose Mourinho and his Man United team again, because I'd say for Scholes, for a pundit like that, he's constantly quoted when he speaks about United more so than any other team. I'd imagine it just gets quite tiresome after a while. Yeah,
there is also the news this week that David Beckham's going back in to take a bit of a stake in the Salford class as well. They're looking to get promotion to League Two. So Paul Scholes has got his finger in a few pies, but it seems that the punditry and the idea of actually kind of being involved with a club on a higher than management level is something that doesn't actually appeal to him that much. He just wants that bug. I should say as well this morning that we were keeping an eye on Shane Lowry because he's back on the course for the first time since winning in Abu Dhabi last week. It's the Omega Dubai Desert Classic, and he's currently 3 under par through 14 holes. Thongchai JD leading the way on 7 under par. We were just saying before we came on air, it's a really weird situation where somebody goes out the last week, shoots the lights out for the first time in years, celebrates pretty well, and then goes out and actually starts the tournament pretty well. So I think Shane Lowry is one to keep an eye on again this week.
Yeah, I'd say he's thanking the schedule in the fact that the Abu Dhabi competition started on a Wednesday and finished on a Saturday, and he had an extra day. But it is if he keeps it going for 4 days, it will be nothing short of miraculous, because even Tiger Woods in his pomp found it hard to win back-to-back tournaments, and I'd say he didn't bat an eyelid after winning some of his. And for Lowry to do it the way he did it, it was that rarity that we crave when we watch golf, but don't often get, a proper shootout down the 18th between the final thing, and to come through the right side of that. I'm sure there was a second wave of euphoria when he woke up the following day after winning it. So I actually saw a video of him on the European Tour website when he showed up in Dubai, and people coming up to him shaking hands, and him in the hospitality tent looking for water, and his quote was, "Have you got anything for a hangover?" So he definitely enjoyed himself, but it's to his eternal credit that he's back in contention this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got one more paper, I think? The Herald this morning?
Yeah, this morning's Herald is an advertisement on the back, but inside Frank Roach goes through the runners and riders of this year's National League, with the headline, "So hard to bet against Dublin." And that's the thing about this year's National League. People would say that Dublin doing well in the National League and doing well in the All-Ireland series, or winning the All-Ireland 5 of the last 6 years, that one is linked to the other, but I think it's simply the fact that Dublin are so good they can kind of coast into a league final, that they can arrive back at a game 2 weeks, 3 weeks after they come back from a team holiday and actually start the league campaign in good stead. Because I went through it the other day for a piece I was writing about who might feature this weekend that we haven't seen before for Dublin. And actually Jim Gavin has been very reluctant to just simply throw out jerseys to guys. Like last year, they played Kildare in the first round of the league, and 9 of the All-Ireland final team that would start that year started in the first round of the league, and the previous year against Cavan 10 as well. So it hasn't been the case where he throws a load of young fellas into the team, see how they get on, and then gradually builds up the team towards summer. He takes the first round of the league pretty seriously, and anybody who's around and who's available will start.
And is that your sense it's going to be the case this weekend?
I think so, yeah. Now there are players that aren't around. James McCarthy had an operation. I think Kieran Kilkenny and Brian Fenton are on an extended holiday. The couple of Crokes lads carried Paul Mannion and Keane O'Sullivan carried injuries for the latter part of their campaign. So, like, there would be one or two, but I don't think it'll be anything major.